Welcome back to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price. You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price.
It's the best of the best. It's the one and only DJ Ice, Louisville's coldest DJ.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
Hey, good evening. Welcome to Conscious Fever here on Ice Entertainment Television and Conscious Fever Radio. I am Carl Price, your host, here tonight on Conscious Fever. We've got an interesting topic tonight, y'all. We have an interesting topic tonight. To some, it's interesting. To some, it is a little disconcerting. We're talking about JCPS. We've never talked about JCPS on this show. JCPS is a annual billion dollar a year organization, Paul? Right. Billion dollar year organization. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about JCPS. Let me see. I'm going to, if you don't mind, show that banner up there, what we're talking about. So here's the banner. The banner is, we want you to join the conversation if you want to, if you can join the conversation tonight. But tonight we are talking about JCPS. And literally the transportation joke continues at JCPS. And the reason I say the transportation joke continues at JCPS, you can see the banner there. Find your own way to school if you are black, brown, or poor. You can join the conversation here tonight on Conscious Fever. You can join us on YouTube. Thank you for bringing me back again the same way. You can join us tonight on, take me back there one more time, Mr. Producer. You can join us tonight on YouTube, Spotify, Twitter, formerly known as Twitter X, Facebook, of course. A lot of y'all might be joining me on Facebook, Mixcloud, Twitch. But anyway, if you want to join us, what we're going to talk about tonight is this topic you see below me. JCPS is basically telling black, brown, and poor children to find your own way to school. They made it. They're making an exception for Central High School Magnet and Western High School Magnet, and I assumed that was some type of accommodation. But at the end of the day, that's what we're going to talk about. So take me back to the audience. I want to welcome everybody here tonight. Take me back to the audience. Okay, there's our guest, Paul Mullins. There we go. Take me back to the teleprompter. so I can welcome the audience again. Okay. So listen, so if you want to comment tonight, you can comment on this topic because there were a lot of comments last night. But before we get to our first break and talk about the show, I do want to talk about just one thing. Kentucky State University. If you're an alumni member of Kentucky State University, remember the alumni networking event on April 23rd, 5 to 6:30 p.m. at one of our alums' business, which is Black Coffee, which is down here on West Jefferson Street. Also, I really need to push this. I really want to push this. May 2nd, 2024, 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. Get your fits, get your outfits. Hopefully they're a little touch of green, a little touch of gold for the Kentucky State University Louisville Alumni Chapter Show Us Your Derby Flair event, which is the annual pre-Derby scholarship fundraiser for Kentucky State University. And this is going to take place at the Denison and the Grand Event Space at 4205 Cane Run Road. Here in the Shively area here, entertainment and DJ. DJ is going to be Frank B. The doors open at 7 p.m. Meal is served. I know everybody wants to know if they're going to get something to eat. Meal is served from 7:30 to 9:30. Food was pretty good last year for those who didn't go. Anyway, the tickets are $100, but join us on Thursday night, May 2nd, for after you leave the track from Derby. At the Kentucky State University annual fundraiser event. But listen, we're going to come right back and we're going to talk about JCPS. We might be a little ratchet tonight. I'm just going to let y'all know that because what they did was ratchet. And you know, Paul, before we get started really with the show, I'm going to tell you this, and I'll tell you this on the other side of this quick break, is that and you and I, when we come into this building, sometimes in the morning, we come in and we run into one of the board members. Right? One of the JCPS board members who actually was really in favor for this. Interesting enough, y'all, as we get into talk about this topic tonight, there are 3 African-American board members on the Jefferson County Public School System Board. One of those African-American members is the chairman. And then there are 4 non-African-American members or Caucasian members, and they all voted for this ridiculous plan. And the African Americans voted against it. I'm Carl Price. This is Conscious Fever on Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. Don't go nowhere. We'll be right back, and then we're going to dive right into this topic.
You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price. You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price.
It always starts that way. Anyway, I'm Carl Price here on Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. Thanks for watching me tonight here on Conscious Fever on this Thursday night. Somewhat rainy, a little cooler than it was earlier today, but I think it's going to be in the 80s the next few days here. But listen, we're talking about JCPS tonight. This is a serious topic for us to talk about. Because, first of all, let me just set this up. I want to set this up. One way I'm going to set this up is tell you all this. First of all, before I bring my co-host and guest in tonight, Paul Mullins. In 1966, there was a challenge to the Jefferson County public school system's inability to follow the landmark case of Brown versus the Board of Education. In a lot of jurisdictions, right after Brown versus the Board of Education, y'all know Brown versus the Board of Education, that was the desegregation case out of Topeka, Kansas. But in any case, what happened was after Brown versus the Board of Education, as you know, Paul, was decided, a lot of the jurisdictions in the South, including here in Louisville, they refused to follow Brown versus Board of Education. They said that they would do it. So, basically the NAACP had to sue in district court locally to get a consent decree that they would actually follow Brown versus Board of Education and desegregate the schools. So there were a number of cases here. One of the more recent cases, or the pivotal case, was written by, decision was written by Judge Gordon, who ordered that basically desegregation needed to happen in Louisville back in 1974, 1975 or so. And I was in middle school at the time, and we all had to be bused. In Boston, Massachusetts at the time, they were rioting because, you know, the white Irish students up there didn't want to go to school with the African Americans and Hispanics or Latino students up there. So anyway, that's how we get here. But how do we get here in Jefferson County? Let me tell y'all this. If you don't remember, last year, the transportation system in Jefferson County was a joke, was literally a debacle. And for those of you who might forget, I'm going to show y'all this video so y'all can just have a small reminder of how horrible it was last year with the transportation. Check this out.
My daughter was dismissed at 3:20 and she just got home about 2 minutes ago.
Right now, I know nothing. I am sitting out here.
To parents like Shara Hanna, we spoke with her at 8:15 as she continued to wait for her 6-year-old to get off the bus.
And I don't know what to think at this point. Like, what do I do? Who do I call? There is no one.
Shara says the JCPS bus tracker listed her daughter's drop-off time as 2:45. Here's a picture of her finally getting home around 8:30. That's 6 hours or so spent riding the bus. Shara tells us her first grader thought she wasn't coming home.
She was visibly upset. So I'm not pleased to see that on the first day of school. I think it was a long bus ride, and I think the route was completely new, so she had no idea where she was.
The mounting wait times weren't exclusive to bus stops. At some schools like Highland Middle, students whose release time was 3:20 waited well past 5 for their buses to pick them up from school. For weeks, JCPS school officials, including Superintendent Dr. Marty Polio, have told parents patience is paramount.
Just speaking from my experience, I've had a great interaction associated with JCPS.
Wesley Barnwell waited for his 10th grader at this Highview bus stop, one he takes issue with, given it's 1.25 miles from his house.
It's impossible for an adult to make that trip, let alone a 10th grader.
Despite rampant frustrations, a reminder.
There are bus drivers that are crying as they come in and they're leaving, apologizing, and I don't believe it's their fault.
But for some parents, their young students got home not far from bedtime. No time for homework, only to turn around and pray for improvements.
Okay, so for those of you all who were not aware, basically that was the situation. I mean, kids were getting home as late as 9 p.m. at night last year. So the transportation situation, Paul, was a debacle, right? I mean, it was a what?
Tobacco.
A what?
Tobacco. It's in debacle. Okay, whatever. Go ahead.
I'm foreign.
It was a mess.
Okay. I mean, I'm an immigrant. We're all
100%.
immigrants, and I still have an immigrant accent. My immigrant accent. But listen, it was really horrible. It was really embarrassing. It was scary for some parents. Remember, Paul, you and I talked about, we may have talked about this last year, but we talked about the story that was on social media where this couple was eating in a restaurant on Bardstown Road and saw that a kid was dropped off. And they didn't know where the kid was. Of course, that happens every school year. So it shouldn't happen. It absolutely shouldn't happen. So here's what's going on. So JCPS this year supposedly has been contemplating since that time how to deal with the transportation situation. Remember, they paid somebody maybe almost $500,000 and using this app and all of this SHIT, and it didn't work. And it was just a joke. Okay, so now it's even more a joke because they are now cutting transportation, which is in effect, Paul, forcing some poor people to go to the neighborhood schools and not be bused in accordance with the orders from Judge Gordon. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, set the backdrop of what you're talking about in case people don't know what just happened yesterday. So first, before I answer your question, explain what happened yesterday at a board meeting.
Well, I tell you what, why don't we do this, Paul? Why don't we show you the video? Let's show the video, and then we'll come back to Paul. Check out this video.
It's a math problem that's proven to be a challenge for Kentucky's largest school district. JCPS says it doesn't have enough bus drivers to cover all its routes and get kids to school on time. The district says the best solution to this equation is to cut JCPS transportation for magnet and traditional students who aren't going to their reside school next year.
Why this matters is because JCPS has guaranteed families in the city of Louisville the choice as it relates to the place where their child will attend school.
JCPS staff outlined transportation options that included denying service to magnet students. However, doing so would be inequitable.
My main concern is that we will limit the number of Black and immigrant children who will be able to take advantage of magnet schools.
A statement from the district says in part that eliminating magnet transportation is the most equitable option with the least negative impact on students of color. And it's working with TARC to make sure there will be public transportation options for students. The Louisville branch of the NAACP says it strongly opposes the change.
And we feel that it will have repercussions of what they say they're trying to solve problems, but it will again put the burden on Black, brown, and poor students.
Saying it would like the district to go back to the drawing board for a different plan. JCPS says there is no perfect or easy solution, and it spent months digging into many possibilities.
Yeah, so Carl, the story that's really untold in that video is also that prior to the board making this decision last night, there was going to be a community response and community input before the board made its decision, but the board decided to call an early meeting and vote on it without community input. Now, a lot of things were said in that video about what the problems are, which are obvious. If you're poor and you can't afford to get your kid to school, to the school that they want to go to, they don't get to go. And you know what? To be honest with you, it ain't always about just being poor. It might just be about not having the resources or the ability to get your kid there. You could make a whole lot of money at a great job, a factory job, for instance, but you got to get up and get out at 6:30 in the morning maybe, and you may not have the ability to get the child to the school, even though you got a car, even though you're not necessarily poor. And so what's going on here is the solution, just like Ralph said in that video, the solution that they came up with is going to inevitably create many more problems. And it's not solving the original problem that you referred to in 1966, in my opinion, in the best way. Because at the end of the day, if you're poor, everybody's got school choice unless you're poor or you don't have the ability to get to transportation and get to the school. So next year, they'll say, oh, this worked. All these people got to school. This worked. Yeah, because all the people who could get to the magnet schools, they're going to be happy. So the people who have the ability, the means, the transportation, or whatever it is, the money, it's because it's not always about money, but the ability to get to these schools, get to these magnet schools, they're going to be like, great. So now the school choice isn't about being diverse and having a diverse group of students to get the best education. If you consider the magnet schools the better education, getting to the magnet schools now is just going to be about, can you get there?
Right, but here's the other problem, Paul. The other problem is, I mean, you talked about one dynamic. Let me just tell you about this dynamic as well. The other dynamic is this, is that there are parents who don't have a lot of resources. Mm-hmm. They rely on basically, you know, remember the latchkey kids and all of that. They remind that, you know, the kids that are getting on the bus, you know, 4 houses from the bus stop being 4 houses from their house, the parents are allowed to go to work and say, hey, listen, your bus comes at 7 a.m. so you can go out of the house at about 2 minutes till, and then you can get on the bus and everything is safely. But now some of these parents without the, and some of these parents may not be driving, they may actually be catching a bus to work themselves. Now they have to figure out some way to get their kids to these particular schools or opt for the neighborhood school, which is adverse or contra to the whole Brown versus Board of Education Foundation, pretty much, right?
Yeah, that and at the end of the day, if you take an extreme example, and I don't know if I know Central doesn't qualify, and you said what was the other school that didn't qualify?
Central. Well, they're exempting Central and
Central,
Western.
Central and Western. So let's take a school like Manual. Even though we always know Manual is always hard to get into, Manual might not experience this busing issue. But if you take a school that's the equivalent of Manual, one of the best schools in the city, whether it's an elementary school like Audubon or Great House Shyrock or some of the other schools. What is the middle school? Is it what is the middle school? Magnet schools, Mazik, or the better schools. And if they take out busing, okay, now you've got a kid who was, and whether they were poor or not, but let's just assume they were poor or underprivileged. Because if,
who lives in old Louisville,
right,
and can't qualify to go to Manual, right?
Because at the end of the day, if your parents are well off, you don't have this problem because they're going to put you in private. They're going to put you in private school anyway.
Well, they'll put you in private school, but they would also have probably transportation.
Right. So let's be real. It's about the poor part of the population who can't get to these schools. So now you've got a kid who could have been a student who graduated or went on track to go through all the traditional or magnet school programs and graduate from an equivalent school like Manual, where he got a better education. I'm not saying Manual, but an equivalent school from one of these magnet programs, or Wagner High School, which I know is a magnet program. But now they can't go there because they simply don't have transportation. What about somebody? Screw that. What about somebody who is in a neighborhood school like Wagner, lives very close to Wagner, but just no longer has bus transportation?
What about the poor immigrant student who lives in Iroquois, because a lot of them live in the Iroquois area in this city, live in Iroquois, and is qualified to go to a Manual?
I mean, it's just terrible because, again, I think of the situations where just because we're naming some of these schools that are high magnet schools, remember, these magnet schools were also homeschools at one point. Well, Wagner High School, for instance, has a lot of people living in that area, and now I used to catch the bus to Wagner, okay? I didn't live very far, but if they said I can no longer catch the bus, where am I going to school?
Well, let's be clear. There are actually magnet schools as well as traditional schools. But I want to talk about this comment, if we can talk about this comment.
Mm-hmm.
The comment here says, from Sean Spencer, thank you, Ms. Spencer, says, not sure how they spent months, months when they can't recite any of the 16 options they looked at and hadn't spoken with experts since December of 2023.
Right.
That is another interesting point, Paul. Mm-hmm. And I know I'm out of the camera and I apologize for that, but that's another interesting point because we just showed the video, which was 8 months old. We knew about this last summer. We knew about this issue last summer, and all they can come up with is an option that would limit students' access to the resource of transportation. I mean, within that time frame, with the school system that has an annual budget, I think it's an annual budget of nearly $1 billion, you would think that they would have looked at some options of saying, how can we actually attract more bus drivers if the issue is lack of drivers? As opposed to saying, why don't we cut something as opposed to add something? Because when you cut something, unfortunately, it's always the black and brown students that get the short end of the stick.
Yeah, when you cut something, you're hurting somebody. And the people that need, look, I've used to be married to someone who worked at JCPS. She doesn't work anymore, but JCPS is bloated.
You can call your ex-wife. It's okay.
No, JCPS is bloated at the HR level. Now, they did make some cuts, but we all know they're bloated at the HR level. And why aren't there cuts to that type of area first to get more bus drivers? Maybe they can attract good bus drivers. I don't know what the problem is, but I know that cutting students off.
I just think it's lazy, man. I just think it's, and I don't mean to cut you off, Paul, but I just think it's lazy.
I don't want to sit here and just dismiss it as being lazy. I think that they could have come up with, they could have had I think they could have had an open forum with the community to discuss it. And that's the part that sticks in people's craws, that when the community wanted to have an open forum before they decided, they preempted that.
Right. They said, we got this, right?
Right.
And they had this last year when kids were coming home at 10 o'clock at night and had to get up at 5 the next morning to go to school and hadn't even had dinner.
So, and I've thought about this. You know, we talked about this a little while ago. So, if you're going to cut off buses, that's not fine. But let's say, okay, there's still public transportation. JCPS better take that money that they saved that they could have spent on bus drivers and give out vouchers to students for TARC and public transportation.
Yeah, but what about the elementary magnet students though? What about the elementary? I don't want my 6-year-old getting on the bus, getting on the city bus.
Man, there's a lot of complications. I mean, do they pay for Uber drivers? You know, there's a lot of
I don't want my
complications.
6-year-old getting in the Uber.
I don't either.
The driver that I don't know.
I'm just saying that I don't know what.
And a lot of them are.
I don't know what the easy solution
from this
is.
area.
I don't know what the easy solution is.
Not a lot of them are not from this wide area. If you know what I mean.
I know you're trying to be racist.
No, I'm not trying to be racist. I'm just saying, you know, I mean, I don't want my anyway. I don't have elementary school age kids, but if I did, it would concern me that that JCPS is going to give them a voucher to get in a Lyft or an Uber, who basically is hired through an app.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I just thought that it would be a solution for maybe a high school student, but I don't even agree with that. That's very expensive. But you know, there's got to be, and what I'm interested in next year is if you're gonna do something this drastic, next year better work.
Just pay the bus drivers more
did you hear
money
what I
with
just
benefits.
said?
I heard what you said.
If we have a situation, because what that video you showed of the people complaining about the times, that's been happening for the last 10 years. But if you do something this drastic, it better work next year. Because if you got the same problems next year.
What is GE? Seriously, more. What is GE? I see the comments beside us, Paul. What is GE? I don't. You can clarify what GE is.
What's the comment?
But she also says,
What's the comment?
Go to Seriously Moore's next comment. The next comment says, go to Seriously Moore's next comment before we look at his. It says, they had an open forum for parents to attend. It all comes back to poor parent participation. I don't think it was a legitimate open forum, though. You know, because it's one thing, seriously, to have an open forum, and then it's one thing to have already made your mind up. Okay? So, anyway. Good evening. Yeah, good evening to you too also, seriously. We're talking to you. Aloysius Jones says the lack of drivers, Paul, are due to bad behavior and parents not caring. They pay up to $58 an hour, but the kids are so bad, it's not worth it. Listen, hold on, Aloysius. I'm not going to let you blame it on the kids, you know.
They are pretty bad.
I mean, they are pretty bad. They are pretty bad. But you know what, Paul? We are lawyers. And we decided to do criminal defense law. And sometimes we have to deal with some very, very bad people, right?
Right.
So, you know, this is what we opt for. So, this is not new to JCPS. The kids are out of control. You know, when I was catching the bus, they used to have bus monitors.
Not only they have bus monitors, but kids feared or respected teachers and staff. They don't do that anymore, and we can blame the parents. But part of it is JCPS is also afraid to do anything that JCPS seems to take a position of whatever we do, we don't want to get sued.
Okay, so here you go. So here's Frank Clay out of Kansas City. Thanks for watching us tonight, Frank. Yeah. Is that Frank says this is a leadership problem.
Bingo.
Hit the pause button. Yeah, this is the hit that pause button so it won't go away. So it says touch it one more time. Yeah, see that's why I wanted you to just go ahead. Just put it back up for us. And then just touch that pause button. Okay, so Frank says this is a leadership problem, number one. Number two, this is a planning, recruitment, and training problem. I agree. Number three, it is a political and legal problem. And four, it is a community and parental problem. The people responsible for number two should be fired, plain and simple issue. Hire someone who can ensure drivers are available. If it is too late, lawsuits are in order, depriving young people access. Yeah. I mean, so that is so true. That is so true, Frank. You know, but so and I think that's my point tonight, Paul. My point here is that as Ms. Spencer said, there were 16 other options on the table. I don't understand why the school board opted to the option that will most negatively affect the kids, and it just happens to be disproportionately black and brown kids and poor kids. Now,
their claim is that it was the least.
No, I know that's what they said, but they never really had an open forum for all 16 options.
Right.
And if I'm wrong, somebody correct me on that.
Right.
If I'm wrong, somebody correct me on that. But it just seems to me that last year was so bad. Remember, Paul, last year was so bad that they actually kept the kids out of school.
Right.
They punished the kids. They said, you're not coming to school.
That's right. The first week of school.
They let them go to school for 1 or 2 days, and then they said the schools are closed for a week so we can figure out this damn problem that we never knew was coming.
That is leadership. And the problem that I have with leadership is a lot of times people get put in positions, and but people automatically assume that because the person got put in a position that they're doing the best, or that they're greatest for the position. I think a lot of JCPS issues, like you said, stem from leadership, and people are afraid to call people out for bad leadership. Everybody just says,
well, the Republicans have been doing it in Frankfurt for like 2 years now, calling out JCPS, the leadership at JCPS, and we were all against that and criticizing them, but I don't know. You think they may have a point now?
Well, I mean, the problem that I have is on its face, if I'm a person who has a child without a lot of money and transportation issues, what if I just don't drive, Carl? Or I don't know anybody if I just don't drive. I got plenty.
I mean, that's the problem.
And it's like now I've gone from free bus to I got to pay extra to get my child to school. And, is that going to be a hardship? And it's like, why? Why do I have to suffer that when no one else?
Hamara says that they used AI and not humans to do the routes. That was a mistake.
Of course it was.
Yeah, I mean, it was, last year was a mistake. But I just don't understand, sometimes JCPS wants the schools and children to fail. Stop voting blue. Okay,
you know what I think?
That's your friend, Dr. Pruitt. She says.
I just think a better solution that could be thought of, and this is right off the top of my head, instead of taking away and making people transport, have bigger bus stops with more kids at that bus stop.
Listen, here's the point, Paul. Whatever the solution is, if you have a transportation team that you're paying almost $100,000 a year, and you have 8 months or at least 5 or 6 months to figure it out, well, you got to be able to figure it out. I mean, have you looked at your tax bill, your real estate, your property tax bill lately?
It goes up.
JCPS they're giving more money to JCPS.
Right. And they get all this money, but the money doesn't go where it needs to go. Like you're paying ungodly amounts of money to people who don't do a lot, but are considered more important than your basic. What if they didn't pay enough people to serve school lunch? And they had to get rid of school lunch, and now everybody's got to bring their own lunch. Right. I mean, you're not paying the people on the base level, the bottom rung, to get the most basic services done at a school. Busing, food to the kids, education. You're paying people at the top in the HR who are running the strings, and they're not even getting the job done. I don't remember, I was young, but I don't remember the school system being this screwed up when I was growing up. I just don't remember it being that way.
Well, when we talk about leadership, do you think it's polio?
I mean, it's probably a team of them.
He really rises to the top, right? I mean, we're responsible for what goes on in our law offices as the owners and the CEOs, even though we didn't intend that result. I just think that when you look really, really deep into the contracts, I mean, first of all, the contract last year was just horrible. And the money they paid these people for kids to get home at 9 and 10 o'clock at night was just ridiculous. I just don't understand when you have all of this time and you know what the problem is. I don't understand. And it's not like, I mean, this almost $1 billion budget a year is what they have. So it's not like they don't have the money.
So I'm going to go off on a tangent, which is a little off this topic, but I have an issue with the whole way they run the public education system. And I talked to you about this the other day, just casually, but one thing I take a problem with is the way they taught kids to do math, the way they tell kids, they don't teach kids cursive writing, all these things that we had as basic conservative principles about school, they take away. Like, again, if anybody has ever watched a public educated kid do math, and they start adding numbers and they pull out and start drawing diagrams and circles, I'm just like, what the hell is going on? They do that. A public educated kid You give them a math problem, they start doing diagrams and circles and shit. And I'm like, what are you doing?
But
we got this little diagram that we do. And I'm like, that's crazy.
I want you to listen. What are your thoughts on this? She says, this is Dr. Kia Pruitt says, and greetings, Dr. Pruitt. Thanks for joining us. Parents, start educating your own children. Why do we keep begging people to do our jobs? What's wrong with that, Paul?
Okay, so the problem is that parents educate your own kids. You know, public education has been part of the American system for 150 years or so. Okay, educating your own kids is good for people who want to do that, but it's a public service. We pay taxes to do that, and if you just decide everybody has to educate their own kids, not everybody's qualified to educate their own kids, Dr. Pruitt. And I get that if you can educate your own kids and homeschool and they can get a better education, I'm all for it. But not everybody's equipped to do that. And what you want as a society is you want your entire society, the entire United States of America, to be lifted by education and not held back. So it is a public service that is required, public education, because we didn't have that 100 or 200 years ago, and we were not a smarter nation. Public education needs to be done right at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think that's what's wrong with it, because everybody just doesn't have the means to just homeschool their children. Here's one from Shonda Wilson. She says, I don't have a middle or high school near me. My child wants to go to a magnet school that is in her district. That is beyond me. I'm having JCPS taxes taken from my check, but for what? Yeah. Our point exactly, Miss Wilson. Our point exactly.
So her kid will get bused to the nearest homeschool, whatever it is.
Right.
So she won't have school choice. Everybody else gets school choice, but school choice is only limited to if you can make it.
Right.
That's just that's crap.
And that's under the consent decree from the Western District of Kentucky, the federal court, is school choice. So I just don't think that JCPS is human. Maybe all of them think that they're AI robots in what they're doing, but this just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And for them, some of them, and we didn't show all the video, but for some of them at that meeting last night to comment that this is the only choice we have. I think one board member said, I don't want to deprive 30,000 students. Well, you deprived 100,000 of them 5 days for a whole 5 days last year. Mm-hmm. And there's no guarantee that this thing that you're talking about is going to work.
It's no guarantee because you're going to have the problem of, I suspect, on day one at some of these magnet schools, a lot of late students, a lot of students can't make it. When a parent, it's going to be a mess. You're still going to have a mess.
Just for the poor ones.
Yes.
The poor ones are going to have the bigger issue.
Well, they're going to have the bigger issue, but let's suppose on day one, you got transportation. Day 52, your mom's car break down, you ain't got transportation no more. What happens?
Right.
What happens?
Right.
It's just something's wrong with this picture.
We're getting all kinds of comments. Do
you get kicked out of school when you can't have transportation anymore?
Well, I mean, you get kicked out of school for truancy, and your parents might be charged. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, the domino effect that it would have. But here's another comment. Ahamara Brewster. Good evening, Queen. With the billions JCPS has, we could have employed unemployed parents or stay-at-home parents and buy fleets of 12 to 16 passenger vans and put in each neighborhood and form two transportation systems.
Carpooling.
Too much to text my plan.
Oh my God, that's a great idea.
That is a great idea. You need to be making $300,000 a year at JCPS.
Recruit parents and pay them to carpool.
That's a
great idea.
It's a great idea. Ooh, Paul Custer.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Here's another comment. Rico Ware, thanks for watching us tonight, Rico. The members' minds were made up, and one member never stayed in his seat during his victory lap the entire time. Mm-hmm. The simple compromise would have been no buses for magnet schools only. I never heard that one time. Yeah. I mean, I agree. And that's the problem. And I'm sure the 4 board members got with polio, the other 3 board members that got with polio, because did polio vote? Was he a non-voting? I think he's a vote, right?
I'm sorry, Carl. I didn't mean to cut you off. But this just screams of elitism.
Cursive handwriting was taken away, was strategic, so they can't read old documents in history.
I think it was taken away because you have some people that think that they know how to fix the education system and they don't know squat.
Right, they really don't.
You tell me, I was an English major in college, for anybody who wants to know.
Polio took the job with the torch burning both ends. The problem is 30 years in the making. I don't know how
Yeah, I
wish
mean,
this.
that's an easy excuse.
That's an excuse, but part of that, you're right. But listen, he knew what he was getting into.
If I'm taking
we
a
know
job,
when we walk into the fire.
Right.
Man.
If I'm taking a job and the house is on fire, I'm coming in with a water hose and a plan. I'm not coming in and saying, "Oh, I'm glad I'm here."
Right.
I mean, you got to come in with you. It's like what you would tell.
I don't give Polio a pass. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, but it's just you're right. He accepted the job. You knew what the stakes were, and you can't just be like, "Oh, I'm glad I got the job." No, you came in. You didn't have to be there, Mr. Polio. You didn't have to apply for the job.
So seriously says they had a meeting just for the board, probably because they knew the parents were not coming anyway. The meeting last night was at the Van Hoos Center, and any parent could have attended. I know they would not have been turned away. The parents start arguing when a decision has been made without the parents' input. If they had participated, let's see if we can get that back up there. If they had participated, the outcome may have been different. It sounds like you're blaming it on the parents, seriously, but the core of the problem is that some parents don't have access to transportation.
And
if you live on the west side of Louisville, getting to the Van Hoos Center is not as easy as you think, because understand, poor people have jobs, particularly where they have jobs, and they have characteristics. They don't have a lot of time to spend because a lot of times they don't have money to pay a babysitter when daycare is closed. I'm just saying.
Well, and it's not fair to just say that basically get to school however you can, because that only benefits the people who have the ability. And if you don't have the ability, you don't have choices. It's like, I can only go to XYZ school because that's the one close to me, and I can't afford to get anywhere else. That's not fair. That's not what it's set up to be.
I mean, I think it's just horrible. That, again, I'm going to use that example with some of our immigrant students because, Paul, you said this before. Sometimes you may not have said it publicly, so I'm not going to say it publicly. But, sometimes Asian students are a little bit smarter than other students. And a lot of them might be living in the Iroquois area. And again, I'm going to repeat this because if they have been accepted at Manual and they're just too poor to get there.
Right. They're going to be the ones.
It's ridiculous.
They're going to be the ones summer.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's just like it's not you're accepted to the magnet schools based on your merits. You're accepted to the magnet schools on whether you can get there.
On whether you can get there, it's ridiculous.
And it's a public school. Let's not forget that if these were private schools, we would not have this discussion. If you go to a private school and they don't have busing, it's a private school. You chose to get into that arena.
Do you think, Paul? Let me ask you this question: do you think that this is the just a continuation of the desecration of court-ordered busing?
No, I don't think that.
And the reason I say that, Paul, let me just finish this before you answer. The reason I say that is because, there have been many, many motions made by JCPS to amend the consent decree. Some have argued that, the schools are no longer desegregated.
I mean,
that the schools are no longer segregated, that they are desegregated. So why do we still need to do busing?
Well, because you can go right back to segregation.
Right.
So, but I don't think that this decision was an intentional decision to drive us back to segregated schools. I think it was just a decision made without any forethought. Foresee what's going to happen as a consequence of the decision, not next year, not the year after, but 20 years from now, 30 years from now.
Right, and why do people do that?
They don't look far enough ahead into the future.
Well, let me tell you why they do that, Paul, because they find themselves in a cage, and they try to do everything to get out of that cage, and sometimes in hindsight, it appears to be so ridiculous that, the decisions that they've made. And I think that they do not want another transportation horror that they had last year.
So in order to get rid of the
anything to do about it. I would
sympathize with that, but to get rid of the transportation problem, we're just gonna get rid of some transportation.
Yeah, we're just gonna get rid of some transportation, and then they're gonna blame it on post-COVID, where nobody, we can't find drivers. Well, you can't find drivers for one of the reasons that one of the comments indicated was that you have bad kids, you have to write. But listen, man, I just believe this, and I'm gonna say this. I believe that if you come up with the right number to solve the problem, wages, you can actually do it. The fact that they're making $58 an hour, maybe $58 an hour is not enough to solve the problem. If you really want to solve the problem, come up with the money. And I say this because as black lawyers, you remember that I worked in the prosecutor's office, and for a long time they said, well, we can't find black lawyers to become prosecutors or public defenders because there's just not a number of them out there. No, they're out there. You just refuse to pay them the money to actually help you reach your goal. Because somebody's going to complain. You know what I'm saying, Paul? Somebody's going to say, well, the black lawyers in this office are making more. But it's the same thing. I just believe that if you really want to solve the transportation problem, quit paying these fools $100,000 or $150,000 a year who are relying on AI to solve the problem, which doesn't solve the problem.
I would think that.
And pay the money to these little people who can actually get the job done.
See, I would think that if you were if I had a solution, my solution would have been pay bus drivers a full-time wage, even though they're only working part-time. That's your incentive. You work 28 hours a week. I'm paying you for 40 plus benefits. But you treat bus drivers like they are hourly clock employees with no benefits, and you don't make them actually employees. If you pay bus drivers what you pay teachers, and I'm not saying do that, but we all know you wouldn't have a shortage of bus drivers.
But they don't pay teachers enough either.
Well, okay.
They should, because they don't pay teachers enough.
But let's say you're a teacher, you're making $70K, okay? You're making $70K, you got benefits, you don't work over the summer. They have shortages of teachers, but teachers are well paid. And I guarantee you
some teachers who are making $70K and don't work over the summer? Come on, man. $70K is not a lot of money, not even in Louisville. I know it's not in New York or LA or Chicago, but not in Louisville either.
But you're not working over the summer, okay? And I'm saying that means you got 8 weeks off.
But I just asked you, Paul, teachers who are making $70,000 a year and not working over the summer? Come on, man. I mean, $70,000
What do you mean
a year.
by? I'm talking about working for JCPS.
That's what I'm saying. Working for JCPS and making only $70,000 a year and not working over the summer? I don't think 70,000. I mean, it sounds like a lot. Just like it sounds like a lot when you say it until you find yourself in New York City making $70,000 a year.
But that's the salary of teachers. Okay, if you don't want to be a teacher and you want to make $100,000 or $200,000, go be a doctor or a lawyer.
No, but I mean, I understand that, Paul. But the point I'm making is that we basically screw teachers in pay all the time. You would not be here and practicing law had it not been for a teacher. But for some reason, we don't put any value with that. All we do is just say, well, we can still pay them close or almost close to minimum wage. I'm just saying, man, they go get PhDs, and they're really, really important.
Yeah, but
while you're running the state, for instance, the governor, while you're running the state, somebody is teaching your child. And
but
you don't think that they're worth.
You're changing the topic from talking about.
No. I was we're not. I was just making the point to you, Paul, that you sort of alluded to. You and the producer here kind of alluded to. Well, if you don't want to make $70,000 a year, go somewhere else, get a higher degree, and make $150,000 a year. I'm just making the point that if I decide to get in politics and had discretionary funds, just like with Jill Biden up there in the White House, inviting all the teachers and giving them a state level White House dinner, right? All of the teachers of the year. I think that we undervalue our teachers by the fact that we don't pay them enough.
Okay.
I think they all
stop.
Listen, hold on. Don't tell me to stop, man. You sound like a slave owner. Hold on. Let me just say this.
This is ridiculous.
I believe that the starting salary for every teacher, I don't care who disagrees with me, should be at a minimum of $175,000
that's
a
more than
year.
Principals. Great.
No,
more than principals.
But maybe the principals should be paid more.
Okay,
I'm just saying that the educational system is so important
everybody should
that
get $1
we
million.
should not play it cheap.
Why stop at $175? Maybe everybody should get $300 a year. Let's just give everybody $300.
I mean, when you got $1 billion budget, why should all the yahoos get $200,000 a year and make a mess of the school system?
Carl, I get
it's still a mess. They're still sending black kids to Liberty.
You're getting way off topic.
I'm not getting way off topic. I'm just making a point. I'm upset because I think first of all, I'm upset because I think teachers ought to be paid more to begin with. I know it's a little bit off topic, but anyway, come on, we'll bring you back on topic. Come on.
Well, let me just tell you that since you started on it, and I'm going to get off of it because it's a ridiculous statement. Yes, we all agree teachers are well paid, but
underpaid.
Okay,
you said well paid.
Well paid. Okay, I'm saying well paid again. Teachers get paid. You got to think. And look, I'm going to be quick about this because I don't want to stick on teachers. But if you make $70,000, okay, and you work basically 9 or 10 months a year, you still got 2 months of salary to get from somewhere else, or you take a vacation. That means if you projected them out for a full year, they would be at somewhere around 90,000. So let me get off that topic and just leave it alone.
I think the SHIT that teachers have to take every year, I think they deserve 2.5 months off a year.
They do deserve it, but
anyway,
it cannot be afforded. So let me get back to the bus driving. Okay,
let's get back to the bus drivers.
Thank you.
Because we have a lot of comments that we want to show before we get off the air.
Well, the only thing I was going to say is that if you want more bus drivers, you got to pay these bus drivers. And my original comment was, if you paid bus drivers as much as teachers, I'm not saying you should, you wouldn't have a shortage of bus drivers.
No, first of all, I never said pay them as much as teachers.
I'm only making the point.
I just said pay teachers.
I'm only making the point that if you were to overpay bus drivers some ridiculous amount, you wouldn't have a problem with people coming out to be bus drivers. So at some point, you offer an amount to pay bus drivers, and there's no problem with getting bus drivers.
Pay them $175. Pay bus drivers $75,000 a year. I think that there's probably a lot of broke lawyers that would say, you know what, I think I'm going to go and drive a bus.
Well, maybe.
And then come back to the courthouse and represent some people on some traffic tickets here and there and make a few $100s. But anyway, I just think that our priorities when it comes to our school system has always been off. But Paul, let's discuss some of these comments before we have to force our way out of here.
All right.
And the next one is, I think there was one before that. Did you skip some? Yeah, we'll go back to all of them. Let's just, because, we asked people to comment. I want to put them on there if we can. Frank Clay. Let's start with Frank Clay there.
Just read it so we can move faster.
Back in the day, we would say, if we can't ride, no one gets to ride. Get new leadership who can fix the problem. I agree,
Good
Frank.
point.
I totally agree. Come from Kansas City and run our school system. They gave polio a raise. They should put the money towards transportation.
Exactly.
I agree, Miss Show. Absolutely. The priorities are just so effing screwed up.
Well, I'm only getting a $15,000, $20,000 more. It's not going to affect transportation, so I might as well take it. No, that's the problem. They keep bloating the HR staff.
With all due respect, why are we concerned with poor immigrants above our own? Yes, I said that. Well, first of all, Dr. Pruitt, we're all immigrants. This land is not our land. I know the song was, this land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Islands, from the Redwood Forest.
Nice.
I remember that, but I'm just saying it's not our land. Okay, so be careful. We're all immigrants, sister.
Well, and the dovetail off that, if you just say that,
just keep going.
It's the immigrants, and why do I care? It will affect you or somebody at some point.
I have worked in the school system for 20 plus years. Okay, seriously, thank you. I have waited from 1 to 2 just for the parents to come in, discuss their child actions and grades in school. It all comes back to poor parent participation. Parents can get anywhere else they want to go. I know, to the nightclubs, so they can get a ride to school to check on their child.
So I got
hold on, let me finish reading this, Paul. They get to the clubs, casinos, bingo, anywhere they want to come to important meetings that concern your child. Listen, seriously, we know that, but that's not everybody.
And not only is it not everybody, but whether the teacher has parent participation shouldn't affect her ability to teach the child unless the child has a behavior problem. So even if a kid doesn't have parent participation, you can still interact with the kid. You can still do the job that is required to get him the education he needs.
Right.
So that has nothing to do with busing.
But teacher till 10, 11 at night at home. Yeah, I think I know what you're saying, because teachers, teachers do work a lot outside of the classroom.
We all do.
We all do. I understand.
Me and Carl
but teachers 50, do it.
I know. We work 50. It's like teachers, and I ain't got no problem with teachers. Like I said, I had an ex who was in JCPS. Teachers seem to feel like they work more than everybody else, but everybody in every... I'm just saying, when I talk to them, they always feel that way, and I feel like, I'm just being real. They always feel like they work more than anybody else, but if you come to the average person who's a professional's job, We work 50, 60 hours a week like it's nothing.
A teacher, Paul, a teacher helped my daughter become a veterinarian.
And you know what?
She
I
should
helped
make
somebody get out of a
more
murder.
than $70,000 a year. That's my opinion.
I helped somebody get out of a murder charge. So, you know, we all have important jobs at the end of the day.
That was important to him.
Well, it's important to everybody.
We have to have a break. We didn't make 70,000. I know you didn't, but I think you should, Cersei. Send our kids to private school. I did. Okay, Deshaun. Okay. I mean, you know, you sent them to private school. Everybody can't do that. That's the problem.
Right. If everybody could do that, we wouldn't have public schools.
And if we just keep saying that as black folks, then we don't care. We don't care.
It's like
we're just kicking a lot of the black and brown people who are poor, because all of us are not poor, who are poor, just to the curb. Yeah, the budget is higher than the city's budget. It's crazy. We aren't spending enough on education. I agree. I totally agree.
And back to the previous comment, it's like Animal Farm. If you get to a point to where
hire the damn felons, what's wrong with the felons? Some of the felons rehab themselves.
Well, but it is.
She said hire the felons.
I don't have a problem with that, but it depends on the felony. At the end of the day. You can't have no thieves. You can't have
non-sex offender ones. I agree with that.
More than non-sex offender. I mean, there's not
greed. It's not about the children. I agree. It doesn't seem like it's about the children. Here we go. Frank Clay, $65,090. According to the National Education Association, NEA, the average salary of a public school teacher in the United States for 2021-22 school year is $65,000. However, this is only an average, and salaries can range from around $40,000 to over $100,000 per year.
Right.
According to March 13, 2023.
Depending on if you're a substitute teacher. So I wasn't far off when I said
Hey, listen, Frank, I still don't think that's enough. I'm sorry.
Okay, but I'm saying
I think a minimum they should start at $175,000, then we can talk about bonus.
Carl, but you're saying $175,000. The principals don't. Nobody gets paid that much.
But it is our land. But that's another history lesson. Yeah. I know how I'm right.
You think teachers should be paid $175,000?
All of them?
All of them?
All of them.
Do you know that not all of them are created equal?
I understand that, but all of them have to.
Not all teachers are good teachers.
Okay, Paul. I think all of them have to meet a certain criteria to even enter the classroom, right?
Well, okay, so you're knocking out 50% of them who are there now.
You said what?
You'd have to knock out 50% of them who are there now.
Listen, man. Don't you think that if you pay people more money, you'll get more productivity out of them?
If teachers were you're right. So let me explain that. If teachers actually had an average salary of $175,000, there's no guarantee that you or I would be lawyers right now.
My friend, Black Americans are the Aboriginal and indigenous people here most.
Do you agree with that? That if they paid teachers a salary of $175,000, there's no guarantee that we'd be lawyers right now.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, what matters is that we give value to those who have brought us here and those who are bringing our kids along. Because all of us couldn't homeschool. It's easy for somebody to say homeschool your own kid, teach your own kid. But, I couldn't do that and be a lawyer also.
We don't value, but in society, we don't value the teachers at any level. I watched
online, they shouldn't have had it at Van Hoos. I know. Where should they have had it? In the West End?
I mean, that wouldn't.
Don't put the blame on parents. I agree, Miss Show. I heard that a lot, and all parents are not created equal. We know that, but I
it's easy to take one example of a bad parent.
Behavior is the main issue for our bus drivers, but JCPS is concerned with getting paid. They slap a 3-day suspension on the bus and are right back on the bus doing the same thing. The problem will never be fixed. More drivers will be quitting. I think there are ways to solve the driver problem. They just have to sit down and think about something a little bit more untraditional. I'm with Deshaun. If everyone can send their kids to private schools, educate our own, hire the educators in your community to teach and stop depending upon the federal government. I don't understand our people and how
Animal Farm.
We complain rather than taking matters in our own hands. What did you say, Paul?
That's Animal Farm. If you ever read Animal Farm, all they're saying is the pigs used to be out in the field and they'd hated their masters, and one day they rose up, killed the masters, and then ended up becoming the masters. That's all you're saying. You're saying we're black and we used to oppose white people who are bougie, but now that we got money and now that we up, now we're going to be bougie just like the people we oppose. Stop it.
Carl, look me up on Facebook. I'll walk you through the schools. A good friend with you all, Paul. Okay, Aloysius. He wants us to come. I done my prison time in the JCPS. I'm a lawyer now. We may take you up on that though. Anywhere, but it's a small room. Here's our last comment. When we had issues in my community in Ohio and West Virginia, my family started our own schools. We all might not be able to teach our own kids, but you can select those who can educate in your community and pay them to teach your kids. Why are we so lazy? It's not that we're so lazy, Dr. Pruitt. Here's what I think it is. Honestly, here's what I think what it is. That, many years ago, the government did nothing for us. We were not relying on the government because we were black, right? They said, we don't do this for black folks. But in 1906, Alpha Phi Alpha was a fraternity that was started. In 1913, Delta Sigma Theta was started. So what that tells us,
1911.
Yeah, 1911, Kappa Alpha Psi was started. But in any case, I'm saying that these organizations were started by black people who were in educational institutions. So and there was no Department of Education back then, but I can't make the full point. We got a few more comments, then we got to get out of here, Paul, because we're at the 10:08 mark. It switches out. Okay, we did better when we didn't depend on the government. Lyndon B. Johnson said, I'll have those niggers voting Democrat for 100 years, shaking my damn head. We all missing huge history lessons.
This ain't about politics.
That's a different discussion, though.
This ain't about politics.
We know Lyndon B. Johnson said that. Hell, Joe Biden opposed, he was a leader, he was one of the main anti-busing leaders in Congress in the early 70s when he got to Congress. Anyway, let's take his last comment, and it's from Sissy Moore. What I meant is that they could come to a meetings concerning busing, and there would have been possibly a different outcome. Put your input, the board made their decision because there was no one there to object. After they made the decision, every parent wants to become upset, come in and give their own opinion, just like some are giving their own opinion here, and they will possibly be a different outcome. You cannot just blame the board. No. Hold on. Let me just make it. I'll let you make a comment. But seriously, there were people there voicing concerns last night.
I was going to say this. I've never seen a board meeting where a parent came in, made some dramatic statement, and the board said, she's right. Let's do what she said. I've never seen that.
Right. But you know what they did last night, Paul? They didn't allow public comments. Right. So they were just shouting from where they were. They didn't allow public comments. So it's easy to say that, seriously, but
I've seen school board meetings. I've seen school board meetings, and they don't change their opinions just because parents voice a concern.
All right. Paul, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back.
All right.
It's the best of the best. It's the one and only.
You can't handle the truth.
You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price.
All right, Paul, final comments.
Well, I think we went backwards last night, and that's the best thing I can say. We went backwards. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, just in a simple, we went backwards.
My thoughts on it, Paul, is that last night was a lazy approach. Again, I'm stuck on Ms. Spencer's comment. Her comment earlier was that they had 5 or 6 months, 8 months to really figure this out. This happened last August, right? This happened last August, where it was so drastic that they actually had to keep kids out of school, deprive the kids of instruction for 5 whole days. And this is all they can come up with. Fire the whole transportation team. Fire the whole transportation plan team. It should have been better. Anyway, those are my final comments. Anyway, y'all, listen. I want to thank y'all for joining me tonight. You can always reach us here on Conscious Fever, the Facebook Conscious Fever Facebook page, as well as Conscious Fever on YouTube. Twitter, I like to still call it Twitter, Paul. It's X, whatever it is. You can find us on Malcolm X's channel. Okay, but anyway, I'm Carl Price. This has been Conscious Fever here on Nice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. Hey. Listen, thank y'all for commenting. This was a very, very fruitful discussion, and I want to continue it. But I got to go home. I've been up since 5:30 this morning.
YouTube. If you're watching
I did say YouTube.
Okay. Yeah, if you're watching on YouTube.
Like, get notified, and subscribe. All right. Anyway, I'm Conscious Fever, Ice Entertainment Television, Conscious Fever Radio. I'll see you next week. Me and Paul.
You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Carl Price on 97thebeatfm.com.
Follow me on Twitter at DJ Ice Louisville. At DJ Ice_Louisville. For bookings, DJ Ice Price 1 at gmail.com.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh. Then I go to my brother. And I say, brother, help me please. But he wind up knocking me back down on the knee. Oh, there've been times that I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able, Father, to carry on. And it's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it is. Yes it is. Yes it is. Said I know that a change is gonna come one day. I know a change